Welcome to another episode of the Create Your Vibrant Life podcast. Today, I have an amazing, special guest, James Wedmore. James, you may or may not remember, I actually met you in 2019 at a BBD event. That's how I came to you actually through Jim. It's the other way around. It's the opposite of how most people find you. I first found Jim and then Jim Fortin, our beautiful, dear friend, brother.
Yes.
And then from there,
Timothy.
I found you and I joined TCP and BBD at the same time. I was like, I need to do it all at the same time. So that's how I first met you.
I don't remember. No, I apologize. Because it's hard when you're running an event and I got a million things going through my brain I'm thinking about. But then I saw your picture of us and I was like, oh my goodness, like what? That's crazy. It was 2019. How time flies.
Yes, and it feels like eons ago.
Yes, it does.
Now we both live in Sedona, so
I know, we're neighbors. It's amazing.
Yes, and literally, yes.
Neighbors. And we don't see each other enough. Now it's on.
I know. Yes, it's so amazing, right? Like it's like we're just across, like 5 minutes away, and we're sitting in Zoom and talking.
Yes, I know. It's funny, but hey, that's the internet.
Yes. So I would love to dive in to anything you can share about spirituality and business. Mm-hmm. I'm giving you a very broad topic.
Sure.
If you want me to narrow down as we start talking, I might ask
you always can. Okay. Completely. And maybe I'll go in a direction you don't want me to go. So you can stop me at any time. But, if you just started there, it's really why I started my podcast. I went to my first event with my dad. It was like teaching marketing and business in 2008, April 2008. And it was love at first sight. I knew this is what I wanted to do with my life, run my own business. I wanted an online business. I was hooked. And I was raised, I'm so grateful for this. It's really like my dad has been one of my greatest teachers. I developed the ability to learn from the good, like what he was doing that was like conducive to results, and the quote unquote, the bad, the unconducive. And I just flipped it. And I can share examples of that. But he was a very, very, very like 3D hardworking person, hardest working man I've ever met in my life. I mean, there's stories of his birthday and us coming in like, happy birthday, Dad, as a little kid. And he's on a phone, like in the middle of a meeting, and it's like, okay. Or, like Saturday, Sunday, all day. And he was in real estate, which real estate, as most people know, is already like realtors work so hard. They'll do whatever it takes to make the sale. And that's exactly what he would do. So we'd come and, you want to go see your dad? Yeah, let's go. And he's cleaning trash out of someone's house because they left it a mess. So he's a maid for the day. Or he's rebuilding their back deck steps. And he was constantly taking clients out to dinner and then they would just not work with him or go with another agent. And I saw a man that worked so incredibly hard and he was successful to a degree. There was definitely a degree of success within that container, but it was like maximized through 3D effort. And it's there's a beautiful story and completion there where he worked until the day he got too sick he couldn't get out of bed. The day before he got his strokes, he was working, and then the next day hit and he was bedridden for the rest of his days. And at a young age, there was this inner battle within me where I wanted success. I wanted, got this business. And then on one hand, there's what I learned in that programming of my dad, of the struggle, work harder than anybody else. And then also seeing that there was like, I think there's something missing. It might be a better way. And so the shortest version is I spent the first several years in my business on all the efforting. I mean, I became a very dangerously sick. I'm grateful I did it in my younger years, workaholic. I got addicted to Adderall, which is like legalized speed. My mom gave it to me. She goes, your sister has been diagnosed with ADHD and if you take these little pills, you just have so much more focus. And I was like, let me try this. I'm like, this is amazing. I can do everything for days now. And that's exactly what I would do. And I would get out of bed, I would pop 20 milligrams of Adderall, and I would sit in front of a computer for 14 hours straight. And I got down, there's pictures of me somewhere, because I was a little overweight when I graduated college and I started this business. And I got down to about 140, 142 pounds. I looked like a skeleton. I lost all friends. I just moved back in with mom and dad. And I spent a good couple of years just working 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then I hit the wall where I realized, like, I'm working harder than my dad worked. I'm working longer than he even works. And he's the hardest working person I know. And I have nothing to show for it. And I love business and spirituality, because to me, it's like the way I look at it is it's applied spirituality, because I don't think it really happens in a void. I think we're here in a 3D game to exercise our lessons, put them into practice. And business is one of the best ways to do that, because there's so many measurable scoreboards for us. We can measure our impact. We can measure sales. We can measure our reach. We can measure performance. We can measure time worked and how long it takes to do something. I love all that. So when you're learning and things happen within, we see it manifest without. So I hit this wall, and that's when the journey began for me. And that's a huge lesson that I've carried with me, which is we need to honor and fall in love with the low points, the challenges, the breakdowns, all of that. The pain is the blessing, because the pain is what finally gets us to pay attention and say, look, kid, there's something you need to pay attention to. There's something here that you're missing. And that led me down a path that people bracket as spirituality. It was the first story. It was the gateway drug. And that is law of attraction, manifesting. And that's where I started. And I was like, cool. Like, I can, first there was like the 3D, my dad version versus like my mom and sister, who are like the airy fairy weirdos. And, it's like, okay, so it's like, so you're saying don't work hard, just close your eyes, think of a red Ferrari and ta-da, right? And so I'm battling both and forth, but in the middle was the scientist. And longest version short is I started doing my own experiments in my life and started seeing results. And there came a point in time where I did achieve a tremendous amount of success. And there was this point where I said, I can't continue doing what I'm doing without telling people what's happening within. Like, what I'm doing internally, the changes that I made within that are completely invisible to anybody else, are the things that I can't ignore or be silenced about anymore. This is what caused my success. This is what changed the game. This is what took me from $0 in my parents' basement to $1 million in a year. Like, I went from in 1 year, like one of the shifts was 200,000 to 1.2 million in 1 year. And then we had another one where I went from 2 million to 10 million a single year. Every single one of these were these pivotal, complete paradigm shifts that happened internally. And it was about 2016 when I started my podcast. And I basically, as they say, came out of the spiritual closet and started hearing, this is what I've been doing behind the scenes. And I want to share it with you. And back then it was very much more like, this guy's gone off the freaking deep end, because I'm talking to a lot of business owners. I'm talking to a lot of, okay, well, are you using YouTube here? What's your strategy here? What's your ad spend and your ROAS and your do-to-do-to-dos? And I'm like talking about my chakras and my intuitive spirit guides as my business counselors, and I like that. I tend to be a little contrarian by nature, and that is a bit so I can kind of shake that loose when people. But then I've always loved and honored that I had the results to back it up. And so, to me today, the final like 10-second, put a bow on that and tell me where you want to go from there, is what has served me the most, what has allowed me to create a business that 15 years later, I'm still freaking so lit up and excited about, that is extremely healthy, profitable, big numbers. It's, $5+ million launches and 10, $11 million a year, have started other businesses since then, been able to help a ton of people, all this type of stuff, is at the end of the day, is that I have bridged these two worlds. And that's what it feels like to me. The yin and the yang, the left and the right, the masculine and the feminine, the weird and woo with the logical strategic. And the more I have found the intersection of how they come together, they're not separate, they're one and the same, they're two sides of the same coin, the more that has served me. And that's really like a lot of what I love to do today, because I get a lot of people who are very like into that. I always bracket it and joke around as like the woo stuff, because I always like to be a little cheeky. And I need to ground them a little bit with some and you need some strategy. And then there's the other people that have coming from that very masculine 3D world. And it's like, and you need a margin for some miracles in your life. And that's what my message has been about. That's what the podcast has been about. And that's what I've been about. And that's what I always try to live every single day, is how I'm marrying the two. And the more I've done that, like the more things have just like opened up and become even more beautiful. And it really is like, I love the name of your podcast, like A Vibrant Life. And I think that is really what we're here to do, is to have and experience a vibrant, extraordinary life, not just all business or all struggle in a business, but the totality of your life. So that was my opening. Where do you want to go from that, Padma?
I love this. I love this. I love every bit of it. I am so glad you started from the pain point. I'm so glad you started from like where you were, which was like rock bottom, because most people look at someone as successful as you and see only the end result. They don't see all the steps it's taken to get there.
Yeah. And then they compare themselves to that.
Yes.
You want to compare yourself to me, then here's what you need to do. You need to see, how long have I been in business? You might say like 18 months. I go, great. Compare yourself to the 18th month version of me, and you'll have a more accurate comparison, and you'll probably start feeling really good about yourself. So if you're going to do the comparison thing, that's why I say, people say, don't compare yourself to others. I'm like, yeah, we know we shouldn't, and we do it anyway. So if you're going to go ahead and do it accurately, and it will show you more clearly. Why would you compare? I'm learning to play the guitar right now, and I'm guilty of this. I've been playing for about 5 months. I'm getting pretty good, and I keep watching these guys that are unbelievable, just like dancing on the fretboard, and I'm like, okay, I give up. But then I'm like, hold on, how long have they been playing? And I had a buddy over last night, and he picks up the guitar and he's doing the same thing. I said, I got to know, how long you've been playing? He goes, my dad was a musician. I picked up my first guitar at 7. He's 35. I'm like, okay, so I probably shouldn't be comparing myself to you today, right? Put in the work, put in the time. And that's an important piece, just as it popped into my brain to share it, is I love talking about these things, but a lot of times when people want to work with me or learn from me, a lot of the biggest secrets to my own success are the most like unsexy, boring secrets. And one of them is time in the game. Time. You do anything long enough and consistently enough, and it's going to produce exceptional results. And I look at that. I've just been doing the same thing for 15 years. I think I'm actually a slow learner. I don't actually think I'm that great at stuff. I think it's going to take me longer to play the guitar than anybody else. And I think some of the things that I do today took me longer than even I see some of my students doing. And it's like, I just think I'm better at sticking to something. And I know there's nothing sexy about that. But if you just kept staying the course and doing something for the next 5 years, especially if it's something you love, it's in alignment, we can talk purpose and dharma, it's game over. Sky really is the limit.
Right. And consistency. That's what Don Javier says, like mastery comes with consistency and repetition and discipline. Yes. So that's what you're saying. Like you can have anything you want. You just have to stay the course. You said a few things I would love to dig into. You said there were some, every time you up leveled, there was like a pivotal paradigm shift.
Big time.
Okay. You want to share some of those paradigm shifts and how
Yes.
you,
Yes, absolutely.
the
So
unsexy version?
no, this will get into some sexy stuff, but the first thing I want to start with is two things to kind of lay the foundation for this. First of all, what I've discovered, what I've experienced, because I work with clients, one of the things I'm really like proud of is I'll work with people at every level. So someone who's like, I think I want to start a business, to someone who's like, how do I get to 10 million? And those are two very different people. Like they're in different stages. And so that's when I started realizing business growth really happens in stages. There's certain stages that your business finds itself. And in those different stages, your business has different needs and requires different ways of thinking and different approaches and different strategies. So a startup strategy is a very different phase than a scale strategy. And there's stages in between. And you need to know what stage that you're in, and you need to address accordingly, and you need to lead the stage, not let the stage lead you. In other words, you need to be what that stage or next stage requires of you before you ever graduate to that next stage. And so when I started noticing this, that it helped me kind of progress through the stages a lot faster. But this is why we see patterns of like just these super unbelievable visionary entrepreneurs that are ousted from their own startup companies in Silicon Valley because they couldn't or wouldn't. I'm not saying they don't have the ability, maybe they're choosing not to, but they're not adapting or changing to the next stage. They started the company, they went through the startup phase, they raised the capital, they got the MVP, the minimum viable promotion, they got the first boom. And then it's like they stay in the cycle of like, what if we do this? And how about this? And what, I'm just like, and the business now needs to mature. It needs to grow up. It needs something different. And this is why they'll put in this like CEO or this whole like corporate exec, leadership team where the entrepreneur can't do that. And that is something I've found is that I say this with so much respect, but it's interesting if you talk a lot about leadership, I think entrepreneurs make some of the worst leaders. And I mean that with respect, but that was something I had to learn. Okay. And so to sum that up, business growth happens in stages, and there is the appropriate stage or the appropriate strategy for each stage. And we need to shift or adjust to that stage and that strategy first to graduate to the next one. So then we're going to add this piece that if you're in a business that is you as a personal brand, congratulations, you have just signed up for the most mentally, emotionally challenging type of business that you will ever find yourself in, because it's going to force you to confront a lot of shadow aspects of yourself. Who am I to be doing this? Why should they listen to me? There's someone better than me. And when you had a widget or a physical product or a service, you can externalize that onto the product, and it doesn't have the same identity level trauma and identity crisis that you would if you were selling iPhone cases. It's you. Everything is you. One bad complaint isn't a bad complaint because you made a funky iPhone case. It's because it was a bad batch in the factory. It's because you're not good enough and your dad was right about what he said to you when you were 6. I mean, like, holy cow, right? The whole world that we get to unpack of emotions and beliefs and whatnot. So that's where a lot of the journey started for me. And there was the first phase, which was like a lot of, and I'm going to skip through a couple of them, but there was like the on the sidelines, not in the game yet. Do I have a good idea? Will it work? I don't know. Is this the right niche? I'm afraid it doesn't. This is where a lot of people aren't. You just even have to ask, am I even in the game? You can't score points from the sidelines, let alone in the stands where people are making their opinions and judgments, right? And everyone has something to say from the stands. And there's the very few people that have the courage to actually suit up and step out onto the field. And it's only on the field where you'll score points. You might lose, but you might also score some points. You might win. Hey, what do you know? And so that, like, choosing that niche, even though like, hey, hello world, this is me. This is what I've got. Here's how it can help. Here's how much I charge. That's when you're in the game. If you're not doing that, you're not in the game. And I did that. It took a while to get there. That's where I was struggling a lot. And I took a business. I became this YouTube video guy. That's why I went to film school with. And I took the business, and this is end of 2013, and I took it to $280,000. And I literally, no joke, Padma, I thought I was on the top of the world. I thought I was like, I had a lot of ego, not a lot of ego. I see a lot of people with a lot more ego than I had back then, but I just thought, I made it. This is it. I am the shit, like I'm the top of the world here. And from that perspective, I had reached the top of what that version of me actually could see. And I had this unbelievable, so simple breakthrough that unfortunately, two things will happen as I share it. Number one, people won't value it. And number two, they also won't apply it. And I know that to be true for most people. Someone will, but I know that to be true for most people because I share this story all the time. And it's like, it just washes over people. And that's where we realize like everyone must have their own experience of this, of figuring it out on their own. So I'm kind of ruining your own story, because this is what will happen to everybody listening if it hasn't already, but it's required. And I had realized that because it was a personal brand, because I was the face, I realized that the biggest thing that was holding me back was I was using the business to get people to like me. Whoa. And that was so hidden from me. I didn't have much friends growing up. I was like a total nerd, totally misunderstood, very insecure. And when I found all this stuff I loved, which was the intersection between business and video and YouTube, I was like, I got something to talk about. And everything I did was through the lens of, I can get more people to like me. And I believe most people that I see today, and it's not with judgment, but there is a level of a need to look good or be liked that is driving the type of content they create, how they show up, what they say, and what they don't. And I wouldn't imagine why that is even an unreasonable strategy, because it's very easy to create a belief in our mind that says, if I can get more people to like me, I can get more people to buy from me. And we could say, yeah, there might be truth to that, except for one thing. The need to be liked is just about the most unattractive quality that someone can possess. We've all had an experience where someone's like, whoa, okay, he was trying a little too hard there. Like came on a little strong, right? Like a little pushy. And then we've also had an encounter with someone where we've said, you know what I love about her? What? She just doesn't give an F what anybody thinks. Isn't that funny? So I started to notice it was very invisible to me at first. And that's what's really interesting, is how much is always there and you just didn't notice it. Just like if you like, I don't know, walk through your house and you're like, man, I didn't even notice like there's this picture that's always hanging that I just haven't even looked at in months or years. Just things that are always there that you don't put your attention on. And then you start putting your attention on them. And I noticed that there was this little, the best way I could describe it was a filter. It was a filter that was dampening what I said or how I said it when I would go and publish something. And the filter just went like this. I would write something like a Facebook post, Instagram post, and before I'd post it, I would say, will they like me for this? Will they think I'm smart? Or will they not be happy at me if I post this? And then I would adjust it accordingly. And then I realized I'm doing that everywhere. Oh my goodness. And I had this earth shattering, the glass broke, the lights coming down from the heavens, just like everything went in Technicolor. Like, Kaiser Sose, end of Sixth Sense, he was dead the whole time moment, where I go, that's been driving every decision in my business. Will you be my friend? Will you like me? And the moment I saw that, the moment I caught that, I decided, so I can do this another way. And what I started developing, I try to talk about this, but it's weird because these are like intangible things, is I believe we all have targets, invisible targets from within. So the target was like me. And I just changed out the target. I kind of think of it like we're playing archery and there's actually a bullseye in my mind. And the new target went from I need you to like me, to how can I change your life? How can I help you? How can I make a difference? And I even started saying, and I don't give a rat's ass if you like me or not, I can still help you. You can hate me. You can have want nothing to do with me as a human being, but I still got something I can help you with. And I really don't care what you think of me. And it came through so powerfully in the way I showed up, the offers, how I positioned my programs, how I spoke when I had a webinar or a training class or a promotion, and how I wrote, how I positioned my stuff, how I invited people to come into my world, that I took the business from 280,000 in 2013 and I finished 2014 with just over $1.2 million in sales. And I didn't work any harder. I didn't work any longer. And that's one of these many examples I've had of a complete paradigm shift in how I approached my life and my business. And this is where we come back to why I said I love these conversations around spirituality, because I think it's harder for it to exist in a void. When you have a playing field, you see your growth. And one of the reasons why I've been passionate about talking about my journey during learning guitar is because I always want to be learning and doing new things. I always want to I kind of have this like little fear of like getting complacent in my life and just like settling. I always want to, like you get older, you want to like keep flexing your brain muscles and trying new things. And so I decided to pick up guitar. And one of the most motivating driving things with continuing to learn is I see the growth. I'm seeing the progress I'm having. And so when we go on any type of personal growth or spiritual path, and I see so many like parallels, like I would say so much of my spiritual path has been personal growth. I'm just trying to be a better version of me. And that's like, that to me is like so much of it. And this is a great example. Am I going to live my life for other people? Am I going to live my life giving my personal power away to the opinions and judgments of others? Is what I do and who I am an expression of the thoughts and judgments and criticisms of complete strangers on the internet? And I'm just the byproduct of that. And when I said F that, everything changed. And I can notice the difference in myself. And I see it when clients, when they don't do it that way, that there's just such a level of freedom and just such a level of power. So if I can share an amazing thing that Don Javier shared to me that I always, it's like one to me, it was like one of the most simple and beautiful things. And it's kind of in the same line. And it really connects with what this was about and what the game of business allows for us on a spiritual path to experience. Is he said, the goal for all of us is to be free. And I think entrepreneurs are actually, this is my commentary on the side of it, as I interject myself here. I think entrepreneurs are driven to become an entrepreneur because they like crave that freedom. Freedom, financially free. I want to work where I want. That's freedom. When I want, there's some more freedom for you. Time, location, money. But that's not all of freedom. And when everything you say or do, you're concerned by what someone says or thinks, you're actually not free. That's just your new prison. And so he said, the goal is for us to be free. And he's like, free within ourselves, completely free. This is no attachments, no giving our power away. And so he said, so all the little things that you find yourself getting into, all the little problems and things that blow up in your face and the triggers and the drama, they're just there to show you where you're still not free. And that's it. Like if we could just begin to see the inevitability of problems and breakdowns and the challenges that we will face as we go through life, and then life as a business owner, and then like life as a spouse, with a spouse, as a husband or a wife, and then life with kids. It's just like higher levels of challenges that you've signed up for. It's just going to be different. Maybe more stakes, but definitely more rewards. Every one of those situations, and especially as it pertains to business, are just opportunities for, here's where I'm still hooked by something. Here's where I'm still giving my power away. Here's where I've decided something that doesn't matter matters. Here's where I'm still not free. And if we made it less about, I need to make a certain amount of money, I need to accomplish a certain financial goal, and made that more the goal. Say, I'm just playing a game. And the game, yeah, is you can measure it through money and profit and all that type of stuff. But the bigger game is, how do I use this for me to as a playing field for expansion, for growth, and for more freedom and higher levels of freedom, that every time I do that, it just catapults me and the business to a whole nother level. And I'm like, that's the juice right there. Like, that to me is just, sign me up. And that's what I've been doing ever since, is like, I really don't care about the money, because I care about this game so much more. And it's like, man, I can get on board with that for the rest of my life. So that's an example of one.
Wow, I'm mesmerized. I'm just like taking it all in. You said so many amazing nuggets here, especially around trigger and drama, where anytime you get hooked.
Yeah.
Right. And that is the place of growth. And this is where most people forget, like they get caught up in the triggers rather than seeing, how can this help me get to the next level of freedom? I don't know if you know this, but I was a psychotherapist for 20 years. That was my background. So the emotional stuff is like, so it used to hook me in till I realized how it was keeping most people trapped in their emotions.
Yeah.
Their emotions keep them trapped.
Yes.
But instead, if you can look at it from that, exactly what you're saying, from that higher level perspective, how can this give me freedom?
It's also a hard conversation too, because there's a big, beautiful conversation about, like, don't suppress your emotions, and and feel your emotions and honor your emotions. And that seems to, obviously, like, you can't have this conversation in a 30-second TikTok video because it's just too nuanced. But the reality is especially in business, and again, if people don't hear the full context, you get a lot of pushback on it. But there needs to be no emotion from that regard. Like, we're not getting emotional and feeding everything. There's an equilibrium, there's a center, there's a neutrality that you can find yourself in that will have you be very much more powerful. But that does not mean we're pushing down our emotions.
Yes.
It means you're actually quite literally not hooked by them in a situation. And so something I've been saying for years, as I said, business growth happens in stages. I also say your business will grow to the level of problems that you can handle. And so I believe that one of the other reasons, again, these are now the unsexy secrets of my success, is that the things that I deal with on a daily basis, and I can give you examples, it ain't all roses, but the things that I can deal with on a daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis in my business are things that a previous version of me would have been crushed by, like that, just instantly crushed. The weight of problems, the stakes, what is at stake here was just too much pressure for that young James. And today my team will tell you that I have an uncanny, and I don't say this it's not to brag, it's the fact that success leaves clues. Model that success and set it as a new goal or destination to work towards in your own life and business, that I have an uncanny ability to be cool under pressure. And that's where that undercurrent of freedom is like, I am choosing to not get hooked by something, because what I do know is, especially in business is just a series of life too. It's like a series of undulating, unavoidable, constant choices. There's just decision after decision after decision after decision. And when you're in your stuff, you're not clear. There's a lack of clarity that you could have when you're in the emotions. And that's why too, if anyone is like freaking out about something, it's like, do what you can to center yourself before you make a decision. We already know this logically. I can do the logic test on any of this. If anyone's like, oh, I don't know about this, it's like, okay, Think of a time you get really angry. Do you think that's the best time to say something or do something is when you're really angry? No. We know that. That's why even I think it was Abraham Lincoln had said, like, anytime I'm angry at somebody, I write a letter and I put it in my drawer. And then I don't know if that was true, but that's the fable I've heard, right? And it's like, yeah, because wait until the anger passes. And then you'll have a more clear-headed approach to like, oh, was I out of line? Was I saying something maybe that was a little too hurtful? I shouldn't. We know logically that we're in a heightened emotional state, that our judgment might be clouded. We've not seen all the possibilities. And especially when we are in a state of actual, like, palpable fear that we can feel in the body. I love this idea of we, the, uh, the, the future that is in front of us being nothing but possibility. And we get to decide how big as a radius or circumference that possibility is. And so the metaphor I always love using is the little, like, sonar screen on a submarine, little 3-inch diameter, and it's scanning for ideas, scanning for solutions, scanning for decisions. But why is it only 3 inches? Why is it so small? And I believe the more we get into that fear, the more we get into our head, the more we get into that logic, the smaller the screen becomes. And something that I had to develop and take time on is I'm choosing to only allow that to be 3 inches. So I can also choose it to be 10 inches or 10 feet or no borders whatsoever. And when I realize that there's always a way, there's always a solution, there's always an answer, there's always something that can be done, something that can be fixed or rectified, why would I freak out? Why would I be worried? What is there to be upset about? Why should I be scared? Why should I be angry? Why should I be regretful? Why should I be ripping my hair out? And then when that's what your future is, but there's also an undercurrent, and for most people, sadly, it's just become pie in the sky Hallmark cliche. But when it's fully integrated, like it's like living in the body, that there is a knowing that everything that's happening is happening to you, for you, not to you, but for you instead of to you. When it's there to serve a purpose, that it's part of a design, it's part of a really great story that is going to turn out amazing. Then, and it doesn't mean, when I say that, it doesn't mean, oh, you're just being Pollyanna, you got your rose colored glasses on. Well, first of all, I say thank you. I appreciate that, because I will be the most optimistic person in the room. But optimistic doesn't mean denial. Optimistic is my relationship with the outcome I want and the future. We can talk about what is, we can talk about what was as much as you want. And when you're done, we're going to talk about how we're going to make it the way we're going to make it. And you can call that optimistic or whatever you want, but I'm going to make the future go the way I want it to go. And we can talk about that. But as long as we know that it's whatever's coming down the pipeline in this illusion of a linear timeline of events and circumstances in this, and we can start to relate to it as, okay, this is actually happening for me, which means not that it's all roses and rainbows, but that, oh, this is here to teach me something. This is here to help me. This is here to get me to pay attention. This is here to force me to grow or let go of something. That can change everything. And yeah, so that's a really, like, it's a really interesting way. It's like, so I tell people on one hand, when people say, like, how do I get in all this? I say, what changed a lot in my life is I made emotions. I made my emotions very important. They became the barometer for truth for me. They became the barometer for my just life experience. Like, what am I going through? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? And I made it very important. But then it almost seems like this contradiction in a way, that I've had to learn to not bring emotion into business. Not from a suppression standpoint, but from I'm not putting importance on things. I'm not feeding it. I'm not going, because so much of the emotions we're in is followed by the thought or the belief or what we're feeding and where we're placing our attention on. So if I just keep my attention in a centered, neutral place of, this is where I'm going, eye on the prize, eye on the destination, eyes up, heads up, look at the horizon, because that's where we're going. I noticed there's really no reason to like react or get into my stuff or whatever. And I just keep going. So it's a really interesting, you know what I mean? It like almost feels like they contradict each other, but
They certainly do. Yeah.
yeah.
And that brings me to, what are some of the strategies that you teach your students to overcome some of these beliefs, these limiting beliefs, or these fears or anxieties that most entrepreneurs get into,
Yeah.
or people in general?
Yeah, I have you know, like I have a lot. I think I think what and a lot of these are just based on my own experiences, like what I went through. So we had I mean, like I think all of us entrepreneurs are going to need to conquer fear in our lifetime. And I've had some battles with some pretty big fears. One of which was when someone did this whole extortion thing and tried to sue me, and it was very scary. And I was actually visiting in Sedona when I got the letter or the email from attorneys, and it's like, you're being sued. And the little fear that I had got cranked up to a 10. I mean, I was physically shaking. I had tunnel vision and all that. And so I used a lot of how I worked through those things to like share, not just as stories, but what I did as you know, exercises and stuff like that. And I think the most important thing too is like, it's all your own internal work versus like looking for a magic wand or a magic pill or a magic exercise that all of a sudden just like da-da, you know, it's like you're gonna have to face it. And that's the beautiful thing. It's like, see it as it's my time to face this, and not run away from it. And that's the opportunity that I had when we were faced with like this scary lawsuit situation. And the first thing I did was I looked it dead in the eyes. And I said, I am in so much, I couldn't sleep. I was having like panic attacks, just like crazy anxiety. And that's not really me. So I was like, this was intense. It was most afraid I've ever been in my whole life. Because like, I thought everything was going to get taken away. It's just gone. So I looked at it. And by looking at it, I just said, what am I really afraid of? And what's going on here? Like, where's this fear coming from? And I just traced it back and looked and kept asking. And the fear was like everything being taken away, like the money, the lifestyle, the business, this thing I loved. And so that's where a lot of it was coming from for me. And what it did in that moment, which was so beautiful, and this actually takes me, it's a kind of perfect double answer here, is this is how we took the business from 2 to 10 million in 1 year, is when I inquired enough and I realized how much these were these ego attachments and concerns that I was afraid of losing. And I had this thought where I go, you know, I could start other businesses. I've had so many opportunities, like Amazon businesses, agency type businesses, software companies. I've had all these other, it's not like I have a shortage of ideas. And it's not like there's a shortage of business opportunities out there in the world. And it's not like I have a shortage of skills. So what am I could just go set up shop somewhere else. And I go, isn't that interesting that I haven't? Isn't it interesting that I keep coming back to this podcast, my coaching, my events, my masterminds and retreats? Why? And then it hit me like a ton of bricks. This is because you don't do it for all the things that you're worried about losing. There's a bigger reason. You just like the joy and love of coaching and being of service and helping another human being. And I said, wait a second. Are you kidding me? That's all that matters. And that's the only thing that could never get taken away. I'm afraid of everything that doesn't matter to me being taken away, where the only thing that does matter to me in the context of business couldn't ever be taken away. Like that, the fear was gone. And so the first thing I tell, and that's what I just catapulted. I was like, I literally just had this fuck it and serve attitude. And we just blew up on a whole nother spectrum. Mike, I have a CFO consultant that he is our, CFO. He's like retired. He was the CFO for freecreditreport.com. They took that company to like $1 gajillion and sold it. And, so he got a big payout, and he just consults with small businesses for fun. And he said, I have never seen a small business do what you did in a year. What the heck did you do? Of course, I tell him the same story, but he's the very like 3D CFO, like, okay, but what else did you do? Right. It was like, no, I leaned into my purpose and conquered fear. That was it. And then we were unstoppable like a freaking freight train. So I tell people that we want to start to recognize it. We want to understand it. We want to see it as this is a something we signed up for, to the opportunity of a lifetime to start to conquer fear. And part of what really helped me is like the inquiry into it. What am I afraid of? What is the worst that's going to happen? And what would be the worst if that happened? And if you follow that inquiry, everyone gets to the same, and not to ruin the story, but to, I don't want to ruin the ending, but everyone gets the same conclusion, that even if the worst happened, I'll be okay. So why am I giving away and wasting so much of my energy staying stuck in fear when I'm going to be okay no matter what happens? And then, of course, that fear clouds your judgment. And when we bring in the law of attraction element, anything that you worry or fear about, you set in motion anyways. So it's like a triple threat. I mean, so when you get there, and everyone gets there in their own way, but just make that the goal. Is like, I need to get there. That changes everything, because so much of what people are doing, they still have their foot on the brakes in their business, and the foot on the brakes is the fear. It's just a little fears, like, oh, what if they don't like it? What if I shine too bright? Or what if I'm too big? Or what if I'm too loud? Or what if people start not liking me? Or what if these people change how they treat me? Or what if people try to take me down or cancel me or whatever? And so that's just fear. And even if it's just these like 5% micro fears, you take that from 5% to 0, is quantum, is exponential. And I'm the proof of that. Like that spoke for itself. We did nothing different. We just did it bigger. I had bigger events. I had bigger launches. I had more affiliates. I had more ad spend. I had bolder messages. This is who we are, and this is what we're here to do. And we're doing it. And it's like, get in or get out of our way. And people were like, damn. And that's what happened, So that's a big one. Now, I'll say one last thing about that, okay? Because I have this fun little thing with fear. Because this is the big one. So the way I describe fear, and with your 20 years of experience, I would love if you're like, no, totally disagree, James, you're dead wrong. But this is my relationship with fear. So fear is this internal physiological response that we feel when our attention is on an unwanted future that we actually are convinced is going to happen. That's all it is. And so the way I look at it is, here is this moment, the eternal now moment that we find ourselves in this moment, the illusion of whatever day and time it is in this moment. And in our mind, we've projected out actually multiple futures. We have multiple futures in our mind right now. We have a future that we call the default future. The default future is, if I just flip the switch and continue to live on autopilot, which I did for a long time in my life. I try to flip people off of the autopilot because I think we're just kind of going through the motions, 90% of the same thoughts and actions and habits, the same thing as usual. We're drifting. So wherever the wind is blowing us, that's where we go that day. And that's default. And I could sit there and I could ask you or ask our listeners here, if you just kept doing whatever you've been doing, where do you think you're going to be in 6 months? Where are you going to be in a year? That's the default future. Then we have, on the other end of the spectrum, the default's in the middle, but on one end of the spectrum, we have the like, give me your biggest dreams. What is like when you get into the best state possible, what do you dream about your life being? So that's your like hopeful dream. Sometimes like we call it like the pipe dream future. But then there's even gradients of that, because they're like, oh, the most unbelievable, like best case, but I don't believe it future. And then there's the like, no, I think if I really push and I could do something a little bit better than my default, but not quite that pipe dream. Okay. So there's like these gradients of futures. And then we have these unwanted futures. And the unwanted futures are the ones where we start to feel fear. And there are some like worst case scenarios where it's like, okay, being homeless. You know what I mean? Like, I've literally talked to entrepreneurs. I've been there myself. I think it's a very common and normal thing when you're in charge of your own financial destiny. And it's like, if I don't launch or promote or sell, whatever, like there will be no money. And if there's no money, can't pay the bills, don't have a place to live, I am homeless. It is not too far off to allow your brain to follow that trail and end there. And then go, oh my gosh, that really could happen. Boom, there's one of our futures. This worst case scenario future. So all of these and a whole spectrum of them exist in our mind. And the ones from the neutral over to unwanted are the ones where we tend to be in a lot of fear. Like, so anytime someone's like in a lot of fear, I go, where's your attention right now? And they're like, they're going to do this. They're going to say this. And then this is going to happen. And then that's going to happen. Boom, 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 boom. It's like, has it happened yet? No, it's in the future. It's a future, right? Hasn't happened yet. And what we all know, and the last 2 years have proven that the future is anything but certain. So we've decided some of these are going to happen and some of them aren't. Like the level of hubris on you to be able to tell the future and know exactly how things are going to go, you cocky SOB. So what I do is I look at it from, if we're in a lot of fear, all that means, if we could even say that they all have an equal probability of manifesting. We could even say, if we want to get really weird, that they all end up happening. And we're just jumping timelines to get to the one we want to go to. And there could be a timeline where you are homeless, right? And so the power of our intent and to say, which one are you feeding? And that's all you're doing. If you're in fear, you're just feeding. You just have chosen a buffet. You went up to a buffet and you said, here's all this food. I could eat a lobster. I could have spaghetti. I could have a pizza over here. I could have chicken. And then you're like, oh, broccoli. Oh, screw it. I'm going to eat that one. I hate it, but I'm going to eat it. So you just chose, like, if we just looked at it from a very neutral place, like you just chose the one you didn't want. That's how I look at it. So I'm just sitting here in my moment in time and going like, the future has infinite possibilities. Which one would I like to choose? And that's where I'm placing my attention. And we can choose again in the next moment, in the next moment. And I think that's hard for people too, is because they're like, oh, I don't know about my purpose or my vision and And it's like, that's because you're trying to cement it. You think that this is like a final answer. No give backs. You can't change your mind. It's like, what are you talking about? You totally can change your mind. Life is a moving target. So if we just played around with that as an example, it's like, I have a buffet of futures in front of me and it's like, which one am I choosing? And once if you just choose the one, it's like, instead of diffusing your energy into 7, I'm worried this might happen and this might happen, and then for 5 minutes a day in your meditation, you have whatever's left over to focus on the thing you actually want. No wonder it's not coming to fruition. But what if all 100% of your being is just focused on that one, and you have the tunnel vision for that? And that has served me very well. Is there's always some form. It's not always crystal clear, and I don't believe it needs to be, but there's some form of a vision of the future that I am guiding and directing my life towards. And the fun way to play with that is if you're like, oh, I don't know. It's like, you do know. You got to, that's a limiting belief. That's nonsense. We always know. We don't know the specifics sometimes, and that's wonderful. Can you be okay with having some surprises in your life? Like, can you invite some surprises and miracles, please? And we don't always know how, but people have linked the how with the what, and put them together. In other words, they'll say, this is what I want, but I don't know how, therefore it's not possible. Or they've said, because I don't know how, then I don't know what I want. And if you can just separate the two and be like, look at it like the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west. I just know I want to go north. I just know I want to go east. And that's the direction I want to head right now. It's like, I just know that I want to be on stages changing people's lives. I don't exactly know what the message is or how I'm going to monetize that. If they're my events or Padma's events or someone else's, I don't know. But I know I want to head in a direction. It's like, then just start heading east and go in that direction. And I promise the image will get clearer and it will also change and adapt. And that's where we're just keeping our attention. But instead we go, I don't know what I want. So that means my life is just going to come to an end and I'm going to be homeless and broke. Or I'm going to have to go back and get a JOB at just over broke. And I found that if that makes sense, like that has really served me in my life. Now, the last little thing, 2 seconds, and I'll shut up, is part of the problematic piece with all this is these futures that we have, especially like the feared ones and the default ones. and there are, I don't have like all the studies and stuff, but there's not an area or much of an area in the brain that shows a high level of prediction and association with the future. It's more where like memory is stored. So they've been able, neuroscience been able to tell so much of the future that we predict is informed and created by our past. And most people listening here today, I'm assuming, know at least conceptually how much we are using our past and our experience to even cause and create the future. That our past becomes the litmus test for possibility. It becomes our level of reasonableness. That isn't possible because, how do you know that? Oh, because of the past, my experiences, what I saw other people do, all in the past. So it's like we create what's possible based on our past, or we say this is going to happen because it happened in the past, or we've seen it happen in the past, and it's like so much informed by that. So much is like this, and I literally got off a call with a client, and I had to point this out to her right before this. She had something financially happen, and she said, now I can't do this because of those finances. And I said, you are letting what has already transpired, it's in the past, determine whether you will do X or Y, and that will determine if you make more money or not. So if you keep doing the thing from the past that didn't make you the money in the future, you're going to continue to not make the money, and the cycle is going to repeat. And that's really helped me. I hope that makes sense. I tried to share that.
That's
Like,
amazing. Yeah. No, it's really, really, really powerful. And I love how you simplified quantum physics.
yeah.
That's what.
And I don't know if we're just jumping timelines, or collapsing possibilities or whatever. I don't know, but I think I would assume most people here have had at least one experience in their life where they got really specific about something. They wrote it down, they did a visualization or something, and then that's exactly how it transpired.
Yeah, I was listening to your podcast on your home, manifesting your home.
Oh my gosh, wasn't that cool?
Amazing.
I knew the first time I came here in 2015 that I was meant to be here. And that was when the question started. I think something that will serve everyone so well. I first heard this from Richard Bandler. He was the guy that created NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. He's back in like, I think, late 80s or something. And he said the quality of your life, and then Tony Robbins says it, because he trained under him. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions that you ask. And where I would like to expand on that is what will serve all of us is what that means to me is if we create outcome-oriented questions and we have the courage and the patience to live in the unknown as we wait to receive that answer, you will definitely be living a very vibrant life. I mean, that is unquestionable. So even just that experience was, how could I live here? How could I move here? How could I make that happen? And the short version of the story was someone was like, oh, well, they just approved Airbnbs in this town. You should just buy an Airbnb. And that's how I got to do it. And then I thought I was going to be part-time, and then boom, now I'm, full-time. And it started with a question. And the problem is that if you're asking a question, I like to look at it as like you really are tapping into the divine mind, the has all the answers. And it's like the coolest part about life is like, I'm going to find the answer is going to come, and it's going to come in the coolest way, and it comes in the most random of ways. Like this person I was just coaching with, I said, like, there's kind of something that's like coming through and I just want to say it. Blah, blah. And I said it, and she's like, I can't believe you're saying this because someone else just said the same thing to me like 3 hours ago. I was like,
Confirmation.
Do you need to wait a third time to say that this is a sign, or have you received the confirmation that you need? And so when you learn to look at life as like the universe is speaking to you everywhere, and you just need to like learn the language to interpret that, then the answer is already coming. But the problem is we've been trained to be in our heads. We ask the question, even when we ask a great question. That's why I'm like, I want to expand on that quote. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of questions you ask, because it also becomes the ability to receive an answer is a skill to develop. And what we tend to do is we go, yeah, how could I build $1 million business in 12 months? And then we go, I don't know. And then we go right up into our head and we said, therefore it's not possible. Therefore I can't do it. And then we say, I don't know, and we can't do it. And I just don't live there anymore. And I used to. It's like, don't get me wrong. Like, I used to be the most logical in my head, that 3D, offspring of my dad. And today is so much more like, let's bring on the miracles. Let's do the impossible. Let's create a margin for magic. And when you do that, it happens. And the answers and the insight and the guidance to turn left instead of going right, or to call this person instead of not, just happen in the most miraculous ways. And we just need to be, it's just like, nothing has brought more like richness to my life than to like experience those mini miracles all the time. And when they happen for your business and stuff, that's amazing. Now, Padma, where this becomes like, you take this to a full circle, epic, just unbelievable level, is then when you go, we're sitting here going, yes, I want to invite more miracles and more signs in my life. Here's where you get to be really powerful on a whole nother level. When you're really clear on your purpose and the work that you're doing, then you start to realize, I get to be that sign for somebody. I get to be that miracle for somebody. I get to be, not from like an ego place, but I get to be the answer to their prayers. I'm the thing that they were asking for, that they were envisioning or putting out there to the divine mind. And that is so powerful. And like, I'm always asking to do that. Please allow me to be ready for the person that is asking, that is in need. Let me be the answer to that person's prayer. Not me specifically, like 3D, but whatever my story can be, or whatever needs to come through, or whatever my philosophies on life and business are, and how that can show up for somebody. And that's a whole nother level.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. And that brings us back to the service, right? Like that's where everything shifted for you. It's like, yes, coming from that service mindset.
Well, and that's what's so tricky about, if we're in any type of coaching, teaching, thought leader, author, speaker space, is that when we're in that struggle phase, it feels like we're at the bottom of a mountain trying to climb up. But in order for to like have clients and like people want to work with you, you have to be the person at the top of the mountain, reaching your arm down, saying, here, let me help you up. And so we have to find we have to be at whatever, we're already on the top of the mountain. Okay. So maybe there's a higher mountain to climb, but you don't see that higher mountain until you're on the top of the existing one that you're already at. And so to turn around, instead of looking up, oh my gosh, look at how far I have to go. Instead, turn around and look down and say, who can I help reach up to here? And what's ironic is the people that you're reaching up to here will be the ones that catapult you to that new height. And that really changed things around for me. Like, I mean, that's those driving questions of like, my content is just always driven by, what do people need to hear? What will make a difference? How can I help you? Where are people stuck right now? And I'm just always asking those questions, like whether I'm like going for a walk or going for a drive. And it's like, I have lists. I could turn my computer around and show you just lists of content ideas. Like, I have 15 new episode ideas for the podcast that are right there. I've got 25 TikTok and Instagram reel ideas, and it's just constant. And it's because I'm just, what do they need to hear? What do they need to hear? How can I help? How can I be of service? Like, what is the thing that's going to make the difference? Boom, put it on the board. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, flush that out. That's a series. That could be a new product. That's a great episode. Let's put that on TikTok. Let's do that on stories. And quality of your life determines the quality of questions you ask, and your courage to receive the answer. I like that.
Say more about that piece. That's incredibly powerful. Courage
Yeah.
to receive the answer.
Well, I think we each have our own way in which we're going to receive guidance. Okay. I think part of the spiritual path, you have to go beyond 3D. You got it. Now, that means a lot, but one of it is like, you're not this separate, detached, isolated, disconnected blob of moving parts. Like,
Amoeba.
Yeah, you're not this amoeba, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like you are, there's already a connection um, that you have to something greater. And that's the, you know, part of the mystery to dive in and explore what that is that's what I'm doing. But I'm just grateful that I've been exploring that long enough that I have enough factual or evidence and data and proof that, like, whoa, I've received things where I've just known that's going to work. I've just known that's going to hit, boom, 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 and then have the evidence. I've even had the opposite, where I started it, and we just had something recently, but um I was a mutual friend. It was Jen that told me this. This is years ago. I did a project and it failed. And I said to her, I was like, I knew that wasn't going to work. And she's like, no, that just proves you're intuitive. It's like, you knew it wasn't going to work. You did it anyways. And that just proves your intuition. And it's like, sometimes that's what we need. In fact, that's where I would start, is look at the decisions that you wish it went wrong. Okay. I don't like to use words like wrong or bad, but, oh, that was the wrong decision, or I shouldn't have done that. And did you know, was there a sign? Was there a way in which it felt that there was something off about it? And it might be so subtle, because I'm someone who have really struggled with, like, quieting the noise and getting into the, like, getting out of my head and really feeling that, because I can have a brain that's going a mile a minute with 1,000 ideas. And I'm like, wow, I started to notice patterns of how it felt when it was on the right path or when it wasn't. And so part of it is going to come down to the curiosity and the experiments you do to really find out what that is for you. So there's the different clairs when people talk about, you know, intuition and the voyancies and the different clairs, you know, clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, and stuff like that. And that's one way we can start to bracket how people start to receive data packets or insight or information beyond the physical five senses. Some people see an image in their mind, and part of the problem is like, we just don't trust it, or we just think it's just a thought, or we just think it's random. Some people hear something, and some people see these things 3D, like I just saw something, or they see it in their mind's eye, or they'll hear it in the 3D, or hear it internally like a voice. Me, why I struggled with it is I'm claircognizant. Is what I found is my predominant. And I think on the path with Don Javier, a lot of that's changed, and I've actually had other senses and stuff develop. But like traditionally, I was claircognizant. What that meant was, if I asked anyone here during the day, on a clear day where there's no clouds, what color is the sky? And you would say blue. And if I said, do you remember when you learned that? You probably wouldn't know. What? Like, you just knew. You just know now, and there was a point in which you knew. That's what claircognizant feels like for me, is I don't have an experience of receiving the information. There's just a knowing that begins to emerge. And I don't remember a clear point in when I didn't know versus when I did know. And so for me personally, and that may be someone similar listening, may be very different. For me personally, what I had to develop was having that courage to ask a question about an outcome. Like, okay, you know, in challenging times, like, oh man, we really need like an extra 20K this month. Or, okay, what's the best way we could generate that 20K in X amount of time without doing this, and da 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 da. Those are great questions. And I had to really practice being okay with saying, I don't know the answer right now, but it's going to come. And it's my job to just be in a receptive state and to catch it, to know it and see it when I find it. And that always comes in the most likely ways. And so one example was actually Brandon Lucero and I used to be business partners, and we were launching a program. And I said, I want to launch a different way. I said, I'm getting this weird feeling. I was like, this is not the way to launch this. I said, so I'm looking for a different way to launch. About an hour later, I got a phone call from a peer, a friend, and she just out of the blue says, I got to tell you about my launch I just did. I did this weird new launch way, and da 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 da. And I was like, good for you. Like, I'm so stoked. I don't know why you're calling. And she's like, okay, gotta go. Bye. It's like, that was weird. And then like 45 minutes after that, we're like eating lunch. And it just hit me. And I'm like, that's exactly what I asked for. And I was like, that's it. And we deployed that exact strategy, and it was a wild success. We built like a multi-million-dollar business based off of that. And it was like really leaning into like having my eyes and ears open, paying attention, like ready to receive and grab, and then also trusting that. Because when you're not trusting what you're receiving, the part of you that isn't trusting is the part of you that's the head. So it's the not trusting is just a data packet that you're receiving that has been filtered through logic. But this is bigger than that. So it's like trying to ask a little child its opinion about the greatest novel ever written or the greatest movie ever made. They're probably going to say it's boring and it sucks, right? Not very good book. Like, these Charles Dickens books are boring, it's like, but that's through the lens of a little child. And so we're so like trained and ingrained in valuing the importance of the logic and the reasonable and the rational, that we then discredit it or discard it because it doesn't match the criteria of the logic. But that's because it's bigger than that. And it's been the times where it defied logic that it was the most successful. This sounds crazy. Anytime it says, okay, this sounds nuts. This just sounds ridiculous. This sounds like out of left field. This doesn't make any sense at all, but that's when you know you're onto something. And so when we just continue to trust that and realize that the reason it doesn't seem logical is because it's just bigger than that. And you're using logic to filter something that is bigger. And if all we needed was logic, you'd have to ask yourself, isn't that what I've been doing my whole life? And is that served me in every way possible? Yes, logic has a place. Absolutely. But has it served me everywhere? Or has it also got me in trouble? I've never seen an acceptance speech or a book about someone sharing their success. And they said, the secret to success is just to overthink things and stay in your head. And if you're in your head enough and you overthink, you will overthink and over worry your way to success. The stories are always someone who's like, then I had this crazy idea. I was in the shower, I was driving the car, I had this random phone call, whatever. And that's when I just knew this isn't going to make sense. This is going to be crazy, but we're going to go for it. And that's when it took off. So that we need to allow that in our life. That's why I say the margin for miracle is like inviting a miracle to happen in your life. But you can't invite a miracle, but then it has to fit the criteria of logic all the time. So I love the cliche of like, I'm driving home from work or the supermarket and something just said, turn left. But home is on the right. I'm supposed to go right to go home. But something told me to just go left. Anytime that happens, look at it as I'm training a muscle to trust myself, to surrender to something greater that can be guiding me more and more. And I love to do that. And because then I get delighted with surprises. So that's a practice, I think that's hard for all of us, especially in business, because we are so in our heads.
Yeah. And that it's like about being in the present moment, right? Like that's where you can be open to the miracles. When I first talked to Don Javier, that was the first thing he said to me. It's like, he talked a lot about the present moment. And I was like, why are you telling me about the present moment? And then I was like, oh my Lord, this is it. This is where life happens, in the present moment.
I would say, especially with working with him, I've had these thoughts like very recently. I would say we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but like the one like trump card that is like the ultimate thing is, if we can train ourselves to be present and be in the present, and our attention is in the present, that solves everything. I think that's where you're going to receive the most guidance. That's where we're not reacting. That's where we're not out of center. That's where we know where our attention is. We know where our emotional state is. That's where we're in our most power. Is the access point to everything. I think that is that's the secret, to me. It's like people say, oh, the secret, and like law of attraction. So it's like, no, that's the secret. Because most of the times, when law of attraction's in play, if you're present to where your attention is, you know what you're attracting. It's when you're not present, even when you know all these things like law of attraction, that you realize, I just realized I spent the last 3 days worrying about da 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 da. And I just like woke up from a daze and I'm like, what, why was I just hooked by that? You were hooked by it because you weren't present. And I struggle with it every day. And I've just invited it to be a struggle. And I do anything and everything I can to practice that more and find more pockets of presence throughout my day. And it's a real challenge for me. But it's a challenge that I take on, and every little bit of that discipline and that consistency makes a difference. And I can see the difference, like, even just practicing, like, you're going to go into a situation that isn't going to be bad. That's going to be bad. Like, oh, I'm going to have to deal with this client, or I'm going to have to, complain about this at a restaurant or whatever. It's going to be bad. Practice presence in those moments. And I found myself just not reacting, calm, just clear-headed, thinking, deliberate, I'm not in my head thinking about what I need to say. I'm just with the situation. And those are when it turns out the best, So I really think, like, if there's one thing in the how can I be more spiritual? I think it's very easy to talk about all these like fun things, like let's talk to our guides and stuff like that. And, let's get some like tarot cards and do psychic readings and stuff. And I think that was like a gateway for me. And that stuff was very exciting. And like, when I first saw The Secret and read about law of attraction and got into like all this Abraham Hicks stuff, that was very exciting for me, because it was like still applying into business. But something like this conversation about, like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, is like, you either are or you're not. And you're either practicing it or you aren't. And I love that the best moment to be present, the best way to be present is the moment you catch yourself when you haven't been. And that's just like, I don't know, there's something so cosmically hilarious about that. It's like, it's in the moments that you realize you haven't been present. Like, anyone listening right now, like, did you already tune out and you're like doing something different and you're kind of checked out? And then boom, you can recognize that, and that's you being present. And so this is in Eckhart Tolle's book. I love that. And I try to practice this one sentence over and over again, which is, what was the last thought I just had? Or where was my attention? Or what was just going on inside, like in my head just a moment ago? Did I catch it? Was I even aware? Or was I like totally asleep to it? And the amount of times like, oh man, where have I been the last 20 minutes? I just in my head, or I was stuck on TikTok, because I'm just trying to check. Look, Padma, I'm just trying to check my stats on TikTok. I want to go viral and be famous on there. And then you're on that news feed and it just hooks you in. And DX said, use social media, but don't let it use you. And they know what they're doing on there, and they are so good. Oh, they just hook you.
They do. It's very addictive. Yes.
Yes. And it's no bueno. Like, it's hard because we've seen a lot of good things and growth on there. I've seen a lot of my clients using TikTok, and I'm very intentional, not 100% intentional. Like, I do my best, and I'll watch it hook me in, and I've seen the effects it has on me, and I don't like it. I don't like, because I'm not doing it very much. And I just wonder, like, some kid today, poor kid that's on there for 8 hours a day. And I just like, that's hard. Yeah. That is the hardest thing, is like, I don't know how I could raise a kid today and like want to be a great parent. But at the same time, I want to tell him, like, I don't want you on these sites because I don't know what it's going to do to your brain. And I don't know what it's going to do, not just your brain, but just like your entire emotional like system, so that you need to be doing 3 things at once and you're bored instantly. And I could see that starting to happen. Like, oh my gosh, like I just want to, and I'm like, whoa. But we grew up in a different generation, different time. And then we've created disciplines in our life where we're able to like see that and have that discernment and stop. It's like, oh man, that's not good. Like, you can go on there. So every video on there, like what they've done is brilliant, is they've created the best algorithm for hooking your attention. That's all it is. Okay. So every video you swipe through, they already knows how to get your attention. So everything is just the most hooking and engaging thing for your brain, but it's not all the same. So one is going to be like a stand-up comedian. The next is going to be something that's going to outrage you. Like I've seen these videos of just like injustices, like someone treating someone like crap in the street. So you're laughing one moment and then you swipe and all of a sudden you're angry. And then there's a really sad, depressing story about a breakup or something, or someone passing. And then this is a wave of emotions you're feeling in 60 seconds. Oh my goodness. That's just no bueno. So that's a hard thing. I thought that's a really hard thing because like obviously we're reaching a lot of people on there and it's helping the business, but I don't like what it's doing
Yeah.
to the consumer, you know.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So how can people find you, or what are some of the
TikTok.
platforms?
I'm just kidding. That's hilarious. So that was like a perfect setup. Just scroll enough and you'll find me, right? No, but we are on there. You know, and I have this thing that I've been kind of talking about too, which is I have a podcast. I launched it in 2016. It's called the Mind Your Business Podcast. It's anywhere you would listen to podcasts. I think we're on all the places. Today, there's a lot of Mind Your Business podcasts.
Really?
Yeah, it's really funny. And we like copyrighted it, but I copyrighted it with my name, so I guess anybody can just do their own, which is totally fine. I things like that just it doesn't affect me. Our downloads keep going up, so it's not like it's hurting us. But you know, what's really interesting is what I see about social media is it's a place where we're putting content out, but I tend to have this pretty like clear observation that people aren't actually really in a learning mode on social media.
Right.
Because they're in a distraction mode. And my type of content tends to be define logic and common sense. I feel like a lot of what's gotten me here is like, and we shared examples of that, is like kind of like a radically different approach to how I see something. And so it requires someone to have an open mind. And that doesn't really happen on social media. I feel like people consume it through a lens of either I already agree or I don't agree, and here's why. And learning doesn't happen in either one of those. If I just say thanks for the reminder or I agree, I didn't learn anything new. I'm just reaffirming my model of the world. And if I say I disagree and here's why, it's the same thing. It's just the opposite. And the podcast has been this place where people say, I'm ready to learn something new. I want to grow. I want to feed my brain. I'm going to listen to a podcast. And they approach it in a different state where they receive news. So that makes me very, very happy. I love my podcast. I don't know if that's been your experience, but I love the podcast for that reason. So
Yeah.
the Mind Your Business podcast has been my place for the past 6 or something years now to really offer for a lot of different topics. Yeah, we would jump all the way into the spiritual realm and then everything in business. Some pretty different perspectives and viewpoints that are all based on like my lived experiences and what we've accomplished and done over the years. That I think while listening on a podcast, people have a bit more of an open mind too. And yeah, we're on the iTunes, the Spotify's, all that type of stuff. So
Beautiful. Yeah.
yeah.
You have BBD launching anytime soon, or?
We launch Business by Design is like, I did something, this is an example of a I guess it's radically different approach, but maybe it's not to people today. Maybe it was back then. We basically just have one product. That's how the business was. I've added a few since then, but like we just said, what if we just had one product? That's the whole business. And that's Business by Design. And so instead of like everything I want to teach, just keep creating products and products and products and products and programs and programs and programs. I was like, what if it's just all in one place? And that's what Business by Design was, and still will be. And I then, to go even crazier, I said, what if I just launch it once a year? And we do that every June. So
Nice.
June 2023, we do a huge live training workshop And I just break down like, here's how I built a business. Like, here's what's in it. Here's what works. Da, 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 da. And it's like our framework for it. And it's a very like simple, but very structured and strategic framework. I'm huge on team at every level, like just not doing it yourself and finding team and aligning yourself with people that are in your corner to help you, support you in your growth. And then being very strategic. And that's what business by design is. It's like the reason I called it that was because I see that there are principles to business, but people don't see the principles. They just see the strategy. And when you understand the principles, the strategies are interchangeable. And so that's why I call it business by design. Is it's like, whether you want to do your business all automated and this, or you want to do more coaching and hands-on, or you want it to be this and live and in person, it's like, it's all the same stuff. It's just it just expresses itself differently. So it was like business by design was like this plug and play recipe to design it your way.
It's brilliant. Very
Thank
brilliant.
you. I mean, I appreciate that. It's so weird. It feels like this is my life's work, but at the same time, it's like, oh, I got so much more in me. Like, it's just one little thing. I don't know, but it's a big thing at the same time. But yeah, I've been launching it since 2016. It just goes back to that thing we started this episode with. It's a good full circle moment. It's like, you do one thing consistently enough over a long enough period of time, it's gonna do well. And that product has had an evolution to like what it really is, and I'm just like, I was always willing to put in the time to say, well, what is this going to be? What does it need to be? What do people need it to be? Which is a great question to ask. And that's what it became. Like, the first version is nothing like what it is today. It just evolved as we evolve. And I'm here for that. Just constant evolution. It's not just always just growing like in a linear, just changing, just different. And that's helped me. And it's helped our students. So yeah.
Amazing. I love, I mean, I can talk to you for hours. Maybe I'll have you back.
Hey, I'm willing to come back anytime, but we also should probably do one in person.
Yes. Oh, that would be lovely. Yes.
Yeah. We're working on we got kind of a hybrid podcast studio going on in the house, but we're going to actually like build out an official set, which is really cool, because we're filming all the episodes now so that we have content for social media, which is really great.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I have me back anytime.
Yes. Yeah, because I would love to just dive into your lessons from working with Don Javier too.
Oh my gosh. So we need like we need a 10 part on that, because if we can tease people a bit on that, like, here's kind of the prologue to that. Brandon was the one that connected me with him in 2015.
Wow. And I just interviewed Brandon too.
Yeah.
I'm meeting him next week. Like, it's
I was just hanging out with Brandon last night, and then he was speaking at my event last week. So Brandon connected me in 2015, and Don Javier still kind of teases me for this. I completely rejected him. I was like, what the F is this? Who the F is this guy? Who does he think he is? Da, 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 da. I was like, I want nothing to do
oh my goodness,
any of this. And I just pushed it away. And it's so beautiful. I am so grateful for that experience, because obviously I came back around, and to say that, being on this path has changed my life in the most unbelievable, miraculous ways is the understatement of the century. And part of what has been a piece of that journey, I call like part of that journey, is the rejection and pushing away of it. And there's been a lot of people that I've gotten to speak to that have, been very similar in that. And I'm like, there's so much compassion and patience for, like, it's just like, this is how we get in our own way, in our own growth. And I like, here's someone who's just unconditional love trying to help you and no catch. And I'm being an a-hole and like, what is this? What do you want from me? And I don't want anything to do with this. And it's like, And then if there's just compassion for others anywhere in their path, and how we sabotage and reject what we need or what's next for us. And to then bring that full circle, where when he moved out here, I'm the only one. I was the only one out here. I was already out here by the time he came out here. So Padma, there was like this 6-month period where I would be at his home 3 or 4 times a week, helping them set up their home, and then, like hanging pictures and doing anything, because I'm very handy like that. So not that hanging a picture is handy, but like I'm handy, so I could do little fix it projects around the house, and I was just helping them. And it was just, and it's in the middle of quarantine, so there's like nobody, nothing, the world's all shut down. They're setting up their home. I'm just coming over 3 or 4 times and just like sitting there eating dinner with them. Like it just became like an almost everyday thing for months. And I knew it then. I said, I will cherish this time for the rest of my life. This is a very special, limited time. And it was incredible. And the growth I had just in that time, the catapulting, oh my goodness, like the books I could write just from like the adventures and the drama, because a lot of the growth I had is, think about this, like when I approached, like when that time period came in my life, I would say I had a very strong mastery of the 3D. Business was at the highest it had been. Like we had a team of 17 people. We're just like boom, 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 crush, 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 take action, kick butt, take names, whatever they say, cashing checks and breaking necks and all that stuff, just crushing it, right? And then it was like so much of that world had to just come crashing down for me. So much of what wouldn't serve me with where I'm going and where my path is and where my future holds just had to break away. And the amount of like, oh my God, and like that's a whole nother game when you have something and then you have this experience of like, am I going to lose it? It's one thing to be like, I have an idea, but I don't know if it's going to work. Is it going to fail? Is it going to never work? I don't know if this is the right path, the right plan, or the right idea or direction. It's a whole nother thing when you have it and you're like, what if I lose it? What if I lose it? What if this is the end? Oh my goodness. The higher they fall, the bigger the fall, or the higher they rise, the bigger the fall, whatever. And the shamanic deaths, the pain, the drama. Oh my goodness. It's almost worthy of a movie, but beautiful. Just like, and so that'll be kind of like if my prologue and teaser, that's the trailer coming soon to a podcast near you. Part 2. And we could get into all that. But what it has left me is a quote. I like to have like axioms or phrases for my life, affirmations, sure. And it's, I'm here for all of it. And that's where it's really left me, is just as we were saying towards the beginning, like embrace the good, embrace the bad, be here for all of it. Like ride the roller coaster and ride the ups and the downs with your hands up in the air and like, hooping and hollering, and just be here for all of it. And I've had some challenging things happen to me over the last couple of years, some really tough things that were very tough on me, very heavy for me. One of which was going live for our event with 2,000 people. And an hour before I went out on stage, I got the word that my dad passed. Like that was,
wow.
that was an intense moment. And then of course, going through the experience of your father passing while I'm going through a divorce and all kinds of other stuff in my business and life. But then being on this path and like being able to connect with him on a level, like, and just having the experience of your father passing and what you're able to connect to when you're on this path has been like experiences I'll just cherish for the rest of my life. So the last couple of years have been the most vibrant, I would ever say. And that's what he said to me. He goes, when we met, when you came out here, and this is like so true. He goes, your whole life was business. And he goes, and now your life is so much more. And the funny thing is, business is the same size. It's still the same in its importance or its size or whatever vastness, but my life is taking on so much more. And that is opened my eyes. Like I literally wasn't just like, it's all business, and even a path, or spirituality or intuition was all for business. And it's like, today my life has so much more in it, from music and this path, and amazing people and friends, and experiences and relationships, and it's just taken on so much more. And I didn't know there was more, which is kind of silly to say, but yeah, have me back anytime.
Oh my God, yes. The part two sounds even more interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
probably is. Maybe we'll just delete this episode and just record that. If that one's more interesting, let's just do that one.
No, that one, both.
This is just a warm up. No one will hear this one.
But see, this is what you said, right? In the beginning, this is the marriage of the 3D and the spiritual world, right? And so
Yeah.
this is right on track with that. So
Yes.
we're
And
not
that-
deleting this.
No, I know. That's good. I'd appreciate that. But yeah, it's a journey the last 2 years. I mean, just like, and I think most people the last couple of years have had some big changes. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
Here's to more changes, more growth. So
Thank you so much for coming on here and
yeah,
sharing your wisdom. And yeah, I can't wait to have you back.
yeah, definitely. I can't. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's a blast. It's amazing to talk about this and not just business and marketing. So thank you.
Yes.